Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 190th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. I am the host of Stories of Service, and tonight we talk to another content creator. These are always one of my favorite, or some of my favorite shows, when I get to talk to other active duty members like myself who have decided to create in this new economy. So, Dr. Andrew Doan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I am so honored to talk to you. Andrew, you had contacted me, I think, about a year ago, and we had a really good discussion about how to balance being on active duty and having an online presence, because they can definitely conflict at times, especially if you are creators like ourselves who like to talk about compelling issues. Sometimes there are issues that people don't really want us to talk about. And so being able to balance these two things is quite a delicate act at times. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And my suspicion is that you wouldn't have it any other way either.
Absolutely. And thank you for your advice at that time, because you actually recommended that I submit an ODE, an off-duty employment chit.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell you the truth, I did. So everyone knows I'm doing it. But because for being a physician, they only care about me doing patient care. So after a year, they said, forget it. We're not going to track anymore and track your hours. So there we have it.
Yeah.
Unofficial, but unofficial.
No, I love it. And, I did the same thing. I actually put in well, they knew I had a podcast and they knew I wasn't monetizing, and I still am not. And I did put in a permission slip to monetize, but by then I was already on my way out the door anyway. It wasn't really worth it to try to get it really started. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know if I'll ever want to monetize. It's just not my priority. My priority is doing this as a active service. And so that portion of the podcast is something I've temporarily put on hold. But as I said, there's nothing better than connecting with fellow active duty content creators. And to kick off this podcast, as we always do, is an introduction from my father, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter. Hear from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And Andrew Doan is a renowned physician, scientist, and thought leader at the crossroads of medical, neuroscience, and technology. With dual degrees from Johns Hopkins University and specialized training in ophthalmology, aerospace medicine, and public health, he brings a truly unique perspective to modern challenges. Tonight, we are going to talk about his groundbreaking work in the field of media and gaming addiction, where he spent 3 years in full-time research alongside psychiatrists and psychologists. He'll share eye-opening insights into how our digital habits impact mental health, brain development, and even our relationships. With over 2,000 healthcare professionals trained worldwide under his guidance, he is on a mission to help people reclaim their time, focus, and well-being. We'll also dive into his current work as a full-time ophthalmologist, just down the road in Pensacola, near me, his popular YouTube channel, and his passion for educating the public on eye health and the psychological effects of screen use. Welcome again, Dr. Doan.
Thank you so much.
So I always ask my guests who are in the military or who have served in the military, where were you born and raised? And I know your story is a little unique. And tell me a little about why you decided to get into the United States Navy.
I was born in South Vietnam in Saigon. And during the war, 1975, that was the fall of Saigon, my parents were able to get out of the country. So we were boat people. And then I came over when I was 4. We were in Camp Pendleton for a year. So for a year, we were there waiting for a family to sponsor us. And at that time, it was called Tent City. So we were one of the first 50,000 families from Vietnam that were housed in Southern California. And I grew up in Oregon, and then we became naturalized citizens. And then I went to Johns Hopkins Medical School on a full ride scholarship where I got an MD, PhD degree. And then during my training at Iowa, 9/11 happened. So my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, okay, you've always wanted to serve, you're a refugee, and you wanted to give back to the United States, the country that rescued my family. And that's why I joined the Navy. And I thought I was only going to serve 5 years and get out. And I've enjoyed it so much. And now I'm 19 years in.
My God, that was so much packed into about 60 seconds. I want to go back to the fact that you grew up in Oregon and then your roots at Camp Pendleton. Do you think that experience so early on, even with your parents, sensitized you to military? I mean, you were on a military base.
Absolutely. One of the fondest memories that I have is actually going to the personnel, the Navy and military personnel at Camp Pendleton, and asking for fig Newtons. I love sweets, and that was my first encounter to fig Newtons. And I'd go back again and again, now realizing that they're probably from the MREs. And so they were just like, this excess of flavored, sugared cookies, right? But then I respected that. I really, been around military a lot. My dad was also in the South Vietnamese Army, and that's why we had to leave. Because in a communist country, you cannot stay if you served against that regime or government. So my uncle, who decided to stay, was actually dismembered when he went back to his hometown after the war. My dad knew better, so he's like, okay, we're getting out of here. And
Right.
so he's always ingrained this sense of service in my heart. And so when 9/11 happened, it was a natural progression to say, you know what, let's go in. I want to serve. Let's do it. Let's wear the uniform and serve our country.
Why med school? What was that?
So being Vietnamese, okay, so I had three choices, right? So my parents be like, I had three choices. I had to be a doctor, I had to be a lawyer, or an engineer. So anything else, my mom would say, you a garbage man, so it's like B plus was no good. I had to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. So I said, okay, out of those three, I think I want to be a doctor. And luckily, I really enjoyed being a doctor, and it all worked out.
Wow. Was there any particular reason why you chose eyes as your specialty?
What's interesting is that, thanks for asking that. I originally wanted to be a neurosurgeon because I thought neurosurgery was cool. They make a lot of money, and it was really prestigious. You get to be in someone's brain. Ben Carson was also a professor at Hopkins at that time, but he gave a speech about how he was so busy. He never had time for his family. The gift to his kids was actually saving another person's life. So he'd go home and say, honey, I missed your birthday, but I did save someone's life. And when I heard that, I'm like, that's not for me. So let's go be an eye surgeon instead, because the eye surgeons had time off. They didn't get call, and they made pretty good money. And I'm like, and they had less training as well than the neurosurgeons. Neurosurgery would take 9 to 11 years, whereas eye surgery was like 4. I'm like, okay, I want to be an ophthalmologist. That sounds really fun.
Right, right. And it's still such a specialty skill. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm terrified of getting the laser eye surgery or LASIK. I've always wanted it, but I'm just absolutely, I mean, man, when you're messing with somebody's eyes, I mean, that's such a delicate and careful part of the body that you just don't want to get wrong. So there's obviously a lot of training and expertise that goes into that profession. So I'm thankful that people like yourself decide to specialize in areas such as our eyes, because it's so important. And is there any particular case or anything that you've done as an eye surgeon that sticks out or stands out in your mind?
Yeah, we in San Diego, I was professor for about 11 years at the Naval Medical Center, San Diego. But we had some weird cases because people get medevaced from all over the world. So this one guy was actually spearfishing, and as he surfaced, he was a service member. He surfaced, and one of those little flying fish, actually with the little sword on the front, this little baby, fish like this,
Yeah.
but poked him in the eye, and the spike went into his orbit.
Oh.
So literally he had this thing lodged in, and you can't really leave it in there. And so basically flew into San Diego. We went to the operating room. We took it out. Everything was okay because the fish missed every critical, crucial structure in the eye. So it was no vision loss. He recovered within a week and was back to spearfishing again and going back to work.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, it's just so interesting too. Like it reminds me of like when people say they've gotten shot and then they get shot somewhere that's just within milli-inches from a crucial organ, and they manage to live. I mean, it's just, wow, that's amazing. And then as you're going down your journey in the military, where did the motivation or the desire to say, okay, I'm a doctor, I'm serving my country, I have my family, now I'm going to be a content creator? How did that get started?
I think I'm a ham in general. You know, like you and I, we kind of hit it off. We're looking at each other. We have the same kind of energy, right?
Yes.
We're not like blasé.
Yes.
So when I was younger, I was a three sports letterman, but I was also a thespian. You know, I was in the chorus line. I was in plays.
I love it.
But where I found content creation was so powerful is because when I was serving as head of addictions and resilience research in San Diego, I was studying about media addiction, and I was traveling from base to base, and I was in a research capacity. So I was traveling 2 to 3 times a month, as well as in private capacity on my own. Other organization would ask me for my expertise to present to schools and churches and other organizations. I find that was exhausting, traveling all over. But content creation, like now you and me, you know, we can reach hundreds, if not thousands, if not 100,000s, depending on, you know, the topic and the reach, just from our homes without being exhausted. There was no travel. There was no setup. It was like, you know, 15-minute sound check, video check. And now we can reach out to literally hundreds and thousands of people.
But make no mistake, Andrew, your videos are a lift. I mean, I watch what you do and the ways that you make these videos, and I'm just going to try to share the screen real quick because I want our audience to just kind of do a little bit of a deep dive on some of the things that you do on your page. I mean, you've got, can you see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like these very detailed graphics and thumbnails. And how are you self-taught, or did you work with a coach, or how did you even
I was self-taught.
doing this?
I was self-taught. It was so painful, Teresa. You know how it is, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I like about YouTube also is that, you know, for eye surgery, for example, if you want to review a case, you can actually find a YouTube of some professor from somewhere teaching you. So in medicine, you often are taught, you would see one, you would do a case, and then you would teach a case. So I treated YouTube kind of like my teacher. So if I wanted to know how to do something and I liked the way a graphic was or a video editing trick, I would just search and I would find that editor and follow that editor and watch it and study it and then practice. It took me so long to make these videos a year ago.
I know.
But now it's much faster.
I mean, as I look through them, I mean, your videos are a work of art. And I think that's one of the things that also impressed me about what you were doing. I mean, you just go through it and you've got like the titles, and then you do all these different cuts while you're talking in some of these videos. You do the background, like in this one here.
100 feet.
It's just,
because you'll see
it really is a lot of work. And that to me was also impressive, the ways in which you.
It's very, very, very unlikely
this
that
is
lightning
funny
will strike.
too. Like,
now,
I'm just kind of randomly clicking on this grounding rod setup for your grounding mat made easy for beginners.
I said very, very low risk, and you should do it.
Yeah, okay.
Oh
so
my
if you
God,
are
I gotta
about
love it. This has absolutely not. This is like
using
me.
your grounding
Oh my
product
God,
or
nothing
sheet
to
or
do
mat,
with like your
then
channel,
disconnect
but just
during
something
those
you were interested
lightning.
in, and said, I need to cover this.
No, actually, I'm interested in this. So grounding and earthing is when you ground the human body to the earth. You actually drain off the EMF that's around you. So the EMF that's surrounding us right now, the lights and the electrical, actually exert a voltage onto your body, and it causes inflammation. So by grounding your body, you reduce inflammation, you feel better. And I just actually interviewed Dr. Sharon Goldberg, who's an integrative medicine specialist, who said that basically this EMF and Wi-Fi causes oxidative stress on your DNA and on your cells, and it causes cellular damage. And that's what that video is about, is to help people how to make your own grounding rod and then connect all these products that people can buy to basically ground themselves. And so some of my patients are like chronic inflammatory disorders like rheumatoid or lupus, or even just a general inflammatory condition. They start grounding and they can actually lessen or even get off their medication.
Okay, that's fascinating. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about technology addiction. This is something I don't know a lot about. And tell me a little bit about why you decided to take this on and some of the key insights that you've gained by doing this research.
Okay, so one disclaimer I have to share is that, I've been acquired by some law teams or legal teams to represent, to help them basically in possible litigation against the gaming companies. Just let's throw that out. Okay. So the reason why I got into this is one.
A little layout just so people can hear. Okay, go ahead.
People might want to wonder why I had that sign. So my wife and I started a travel channel. That's why that's there.
Of course you did.
And so anyway, so I was addicted to video games during med school and before I got in the Navy. So I was playing 100 hours per week for about 10 years, and it nearly destroyed my life, my family. And then I finally got okay with it, or I don't know, in recovery before I joined the Navy to basically, be serious about the Navy. But when I got to the Navy, I saw all these service members also addicted, especially the trauma patients from, the Middle East. So what happened was you had patients who were traumatized or had head injuries or IED injuries. And I would just talk to them during the ophthalmology exam because they had some head injuries, because 10% of all injuries actually happen to the head, especially during wartime. And so I had to say, how are you doing? How's your family? How are you in your recovery and your rehabilitation? And they would say, oh, doc, I'm just terrible. I'm so depressed. All I do is play games all day. So they'll be watching Netflix or watching media all day long. And it's like 10 hours. And so that's why they were having problems psychologically as well, because I was there, right? I was there playing 100 hours a week. I knew exactly what that was doing to my mind. So if I needed time to recover as a wounded warrior, I definitely don't want to be on the screens 10, 12, 14 hours a day. So that's when I at that time, I wrote a email to Admiral Gillingham. He's retired now. And I said, sir, I think I know what's going on. Let me, share with the command what's going on. And that's when they started hooking me up to people in, recovery there, dealing with the Wounded Warrior program, as well as in psychiatry with Dr. Warren Clam, who was the head of the DMH, Directorate of Mental Health. So that's when they moved me over into that position. And I was 100% time in psychiatry working in this field, because we wanted to know how much it was affecting service members, how bad it was. And we started writing papers and started to basically educate people. And that's how I got involved into this whole media addiction in the military.
Because it's something that isn't talked about. And when I served on USS Nimitz, I served with a XO. His name is Dave Kurtz, captain. He's now a captain.
Yes, he wrote a paper.
Yes. Yes, he wrote a paper, and he used some of the research from his time being the XO on USS Nimitz. And I remember I followed up with him afterwards about it. And I said, absolutely. I said, it is such a distraction when you can't find your sailors and they are tied to their phones. And we see it even in our relationships. I believe it degrades the relationships that we have with one another when we can't put the phones down and interact with people face to face. And we all see that even in our day-to-day lives. And
that's right.
As you were going through this research, did you have a hard time getting people to see this as an addiction? I can imagine that people saw this as, because process addictions, I think is what they're called a lot of times, versus let's say a drug addiction or alcohol. Sex addiction might even be under this to a certain degree. People don't exercise addiction. People just don't see it in the same way, but it is a compulsion.
Yes. And so, yes, but my argument was so good because I'm a PhD in neuroscience. So basically I understand brain neuroscience. So often when people talk about addiction and dopamine, they said, oh, it fires dopamine. And usually they stop there. The psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors don't go any further than this level of the brain, which is where dopamine is fired in the midbrain. But because I'm a neuroscientist, and I also worked on what is known as the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal pathways since a senior in high school. So I worked in the lab 5 years before med school in a neuroscience lab. What that pathway is that dopamine actually activates the hypothalamus, which then activates the pituitary, which then activates the adrenals on top of your kidneys. And then also there's the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal, which is the ovaries and the testicles, and then also the thyroid axis. all those axes are fired when you play video games. So it's just not a compulsion. It's actually like a digital drug-like effect. So meaning that when you have two gamers that are playing and they are human beings, like right now, you and I are interacting as human beings. If you were an AI, my HPA, HPG, HPT axes would be not as activated, but because you're a human being and I know that, now I'm more activated. I have more testosterone, more adrenaline, more cortisol in my bloodstream. If we had met in person and we're doing this face to face, it would even be higher.
Correct.
The games fire the same pathways, and that's what people are addicted to. Not just the dopamine, but they are addicted to the adrenaline rush, the testosterone rush, the thyroid hormones that are being released into their bloodstream, and even endorphins. So at the University of Washington, at BAMC, actually, it's I think it's BAMC up there, where Dr. Hoffman and his team uses a virtual reality game called Snow World. And while the burn victim plays Snow World, they can actually scrub the burns off of burn victims. They can actually reduce pain by 60% just from a video game.
Wow. That's how powerful these games are. It's interesting because everybody kind of looks at things from their own personal experiences. And I have been addicted to video games, but it was so long ago. It was back in the day when I didn't even have the Atari. I had the Intellivision, which I think was there was like a knockoff Atari. But I do remember being addicted to them as well. I remember spending all my days just to keep trying to get to the next level, the next level, the next level. And I played games out until I had maxed out to as far with them as I could. And because they do become this thing that you keep doing. And tell me a little bit about why that's harmful.
Oh, so any addiction, like process addiction or drug addiction, it can actually lead to very extreme cases. So for example, I published this paper, I can talk about it. At NAS Pensacola, there was an avionics instructor. It was an E6 and pretty senior instructor. So he was addicted to games and we didn't know it. But one Tuesday, he didn't show up after 72 hours of basically liberty. He didn't show up to work. So he's AWOL. So basically they go out to his house, knock on his door, break down his door, and he's bleeding out on the kitchen floor with a knife next to him. So during the investigation process, he claims that someone broke into his house, stabbed him, robbed him, and then left. But somehow they locked the deadbolt before they left. Okay. So then when they did the investigation, he had buckets and bottles of urine and feces everywhere because he didn't fix his toilet. His toilet broke and he didn't have time. So finally he confessed that he was a gamer and he was playing an online game called EverQuest, to the point where he basically didn't take care of himself, didn't take care of his household, and he stabbed himself to get out of trouble.
To get out of trouble? What do you mean?
Because he was AWOL on
I see.
Tuesday. So what happened was he played straight through a 3-day weekend because there was a new expansion pack that came out. So he did not sleep. He played literally through like Friday night till like Monday, right? So he's supposed to then sleep and then wake up Tuesday, but then he probably, played late into Monday and he overslept his alarm. So that's when he realized he was in trouble.
But to go to that kind of an extreme is fascinating, that somebody could get that caught up in it. And I mean, and it ruins lives. I mean, people drop out of school, people lose their families, and just like any other addiction. And I think that it's one that just isn't talked about. And tell me a little bit. I saw like on your YouTube that's I think it might be your most popular video with 125,000 views. What has been the reception as you've been talking about this and spreading awareness?
It's interesting. 10 years ago, people thought I was a quack and they were calling me names. Now they're like, okay, he's right. Because in 2023, the World Health Organization declared it as an official diagnosis. So it's going to be an official diagnosis in the US as they adopt the next ICD, which is ICD-11. Right now we're in ICD-10. Give it a couple years.
What's ICD stand for?
It's the International Classification of Disorders or Diseases. So it's basically a code system to get paid. So when you come, if I see you and you're like, let's say stomach ache, I can't just code a stomach ache. I have to say you have I don't know, appendicitis or whatever It is. And so now appendicitis has a code, and I put that code down, and that's billable. But
I see.
now there's a billable code for gaming addiction that's now declared by the WHO. And so now it's being more accepted, and people see it, right? They just basically look around and they know people who flunked out of college, who failed out of life, who basically are just now stuck at home playing games in their parents' basement. It's so prevalent now that it's hard to deny it anymore.
What is the treatment for it? Is it similar to other addictions where people just have to figure out like where the root cause? I mean, like any other addiction, like is there like a 10-step programs? Are there, how do people break that cycle?
Sure. There's a 12-step program called Online Gamers Anonymous. And basically, so they go through those, they go through traditional recovery programs. They have to unplug the person, from the device, teach them how to like manage it. It's more like food addiction, kind of like they have to learn how to live with technology in a way that's healthy. So for me, I can't play games anymore. I always go back to the same habits because the whole dopamine neuronal pathways are already there. And so I can never play casually, and I'm not really, I can probably play in television and, Atari games and, asteroids, and that's fine. Those are pretty boring, but I can't jump into the games I love because those would just suck me back in, and I'll go back to like 12 hours a day. And so that's not very healthy. So for example, people have to learn how to do that during the recovery process as well. The problem is though, and I've seen this too, and it affects service members and their families. And I hope service members who are listening will actually, take this to heart. So when you're overseas and your child is, let's say, diagnosed with autism, you're actually disqualified to be overseas. So you get sent home to CONUS. And it doesn't matter what rank you are, what you're doing. If your child has autism, there's no support for autism over there. Now there's a link to excessive screen time with autism, meaning that if a child's playing 10 hours a day, they're going to give up other areas of brain development. And we're seeing this as mimicking autistic symptoms. But when we take the screens away, the child can get better. And I've seen like severely autistic children at the age of, let's say 2, come to me for eye screening because they want to make sure it's not their vision that's causing their delay in development. But when we take the screens away and the parents are willing to, I've seen kids become normal in like 6 to 12 months.
That's fascinating. Wow.
So that's the severity of it.
Wow. I mean, what you were talking about is, as I was listening, I was thinking about the fact that alcohol is like that for me, like how gaming was for you. I can't just drink for the sake of drinking, like have one drink. To me, there's just no point. I mean, because when I drank because I wanted to at least get a slight buzz. I mean, I didn't have to get full blown drunk, but I wanted to feel something from it. In other words, I wanted that dopamine rush. I wanted that feeling of that euphoria. And so to casually drink there's no point for me. So it's just better. And this year, this April, actually right now, it'll be, 1 year that I have not had a drop of alcohol. And
congrats.
Thank you. And it feels really good. And I don't miss it because I just know what it does. I know what the ultimate outcome will be. And it's interesting too, because I don't judge people who do it either, because my husband, he doesn't have that same reaction to it. He'll drink and have one drink and then walk away. And he's never seen alcohol the same way or used it in the way that I always did. So I think that it's really important to understand yourself and to understand that everyone has different vices or process addictions or things that they can have a compulsion towards. But it's really interesting to go into the neuroscience of it and see how these vices impact your brain and actually create an addiction within your brain. It's not just a physical addiction like drugs are, going through withdrawal and all those things, but there's a mental addiction that I never really thought about.
Yeah, another way to think about this, Teresa, is that cocaine, for example, and I've never taken cocaine, but I just know it as a neuroscience or neuroscientist, what cocaine does. So cocaine actually blocks the reuptake of dopamine. So dopamine is that, the feel good, reinforcement. So, but it only blocks the reuptake, meaning that cocaine blocks the recycling of dopamine, and it makes dopamine levels go up, because it blocks the reuptake. So that means with cocaine, you're getting high of the dopamine that is already there in your brain. It doesn't add any more. So basically, if you can drive that dopamine out, squeeze it out with a thought, squeeze it out with a process addiction, squeeze it out with alcohol. And this is my theory with alcohol. Like, for example, it's a inhibitory agent, right? It really doesn't stimulate. It's actually inhibits, sedates you. But when it sedates you, it allows your mind to drive the dopamine, because when you drink, you feel a certain way that when you're not drunk, right? Or when you're not buzzed. So when you're buzzed, you can actually feel high, because either you feel sexier or funnier or more outgoing, or whatever it is. That's driving dopamine in the brain. And so because I'm a neuroscientist and understand addictions of myself to video games, when I'm drunk, I can drive my own dopamine, and I realize it. I tell a joke and people laugh, and then I feel the dopamine just
going up, the existing dopamine that you already have. Well, I mean, do you think that it's unhealthy to do things that will drive it up, though? Because everything does that. I mean, if you have a sense of accomplishment, like let's say you go and you give an amazing speech and everyone's like, oh, you were so great. Oh, yeah. And then you feel so good. You're going to get a dopamine rush from that. Or if you do a really good workout and you're done with the workout and you're proud of yourself for the day. So how do we manage those dopamine highs in a way that's more constructive?
You have to take a break. So what I tell people, and I would tell myself also, this is me speaking to myself, which I also talk to my patients and other people, to basically savor the moment. So basically, when you get an award, or when you get at a person, just enjoy it for a while, meditate, be mindful, and just enjoy the moment for a couple days, maybe a week. Don't even go talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more dopamine you're driving. And that's why people love talking about a certain thing over and over and over again, because every time they retell the story, guess what? They're driving that dopamine again. And so, for me, I'll be full disclosure, since I'm always very open anyway. I got diagnosed with bipolar a couple years ago. And so a bipolar, the functionality is dopamine. That when a bipolar person's high, I get, and other bipolars get, medication to block that dopamine rush. But what gets me high is my own dopamine. So even without any drug or anything else, I know I'm driving my own dopamine with just a thought.
Yeah.
So much that I can get my blood pressure up. I get my heart rate up to 150. It's crazy. So I've learned how to reel that in and not basically drive that as much anymore.
Because you have to take ownership of it. Yeah, I'm adopted, and my birth mother is bipolar, and I went through a psychotic break at the age of 19, and at the time they thought it might be a bipolar episode with psychotic elements. I was told at the time that was a possibility, and I haven't had an episode since. And then I've also had Greg Martin on my show, who wrote the book, The Bipolar General. And
that was great.
Fascinating conversation, and there was so much in his story that resonated with my story. And so I've always felt that bipolar could have been possibly, I've never been formally diagnosed with it, but I've always felt that much of what the experiences that somebody who has bipolar do match a lot of the things that I have also personally experienced. And you're absolutely correct. Either you have to recognize that you may need medication, as Greg and yourself do, or you have to find ways to, like you said, savor the moment. And I even had a talk with my mother-in-law about this tonight, about how, because I just basically officially, I'm not retired yet, but I'm burning down all my leave before I retire, and I'm starting a skill bridge in June. So now I'm done. I don't have to go back to work. None of that. God willing, I continue the podcast, and I just volunteer my time. And we were talking about this next stage of life, and about how we might not have those highs like we had before day to day, because we're not in our jobs anymore. We're not needed all the time. We're not like the go-to person at the workplace. And how do we continue to feel like our lives have meaning and purpose, but then not get so sucked in to just chasing that high? It's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, but I think you found it with the SOS podcast and what you're doing. I mean, you love this, right? You
I
love,
do.
and I do too. I started interviewing because you motivated me by watching. I watch all your interviews and I'm like, I need to interview other people. And actually, it's a lot of fun. You get the
It is.
chance to socialize. It's a chance to get to know somebody. And if you have a friend, it's a chance to have a reunion, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, and there's just that energy, and people love it. I mean, people. I think you found something that you can actually get that you know drive to basically make it to the next day and be happy and find joy and find value in what you do.
And find something that you're passionate about. Yeah, the only thing that I really want to compliment it with are some local civic projects. I actually found some political organizations, or one that's here locally, because I do love politics, and animals. So I'm looking to see if there's like a local animal group that I can get involved in. But no, to your point, the interviews with the people, that is a wonderful way that I've seen you expand on the podcast. In fact, you were just on the road. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, that was exciting. Yeah. So I was invited to go out to basically interview a recovery center. And I had no idea the founder. The founder is Brandon McDonough. And Brandon McDonough is actually very well known because in the Prescott fires in 2013, his hotshot crew of 20 got wiped out. He was the only lone survivor during that catastrophe. It's one of the worst firefighting accidents in the history of the US. But through that process, he was also addicted to, he was addicted already before he became a firefighter, but then it got worse because of that catastrophe. He also had survivor's guilt and all this problems emotionally. So he went through recovery, got better, and he felt like, hey, I need to do something for my fellow firefighters and other first responders in the military. So he started a recovery center, and it's called Anchor Point and Hold Fast. Hold Fast is the kind of like the outpatient recovery, and then Anchor Point is the inpatient. But it was really cool because I got to go out there and didn't realize how big this guy was. And during the interview, as I'm asking questions, I realized how big he was, and I knew he was a firefighter. I knew he had some hardships, but I didn't know he had a movie about him. So actually, when I was editing the video, I was, before I did that, I watched the movie to basically do justice to the video, right? To put in the right, B-rolls and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a, man, it was so cool because it was, one, it's a sponsored video, and two, it was I had to do everything. So I was shooting it, audio it, editing it. And so at one time, one of the guys there, GJ, he was like, man, you need some help. You need somebody to help set up and stuff like that.
Well, I was really impressed by watching you. I was so in awe of what you're doing because, and I haven't announced yet where my skill bridge is, but that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm actually, and it's been, I'm going to be working with somebody, a local business owner. That's all I'll say for now, because he's coming on my podcast, but I'll be working with a local business owner, and I'm going to be going out there and doing interviews with him and filming in motion and doing all these kinds of things that my husband is very good at, but I am not so good at. And I kind of look at it as like this oomph to kind of push me to that next level. And I think, Andrew, you're just a living embodiment of, you just got to get out there and do it. You remind me so much of Rich Cardona. So Rich Cardona is a military member, former. Was a Marine pilot, helicopter pilot. And he got out and he started a podcast for business owners, and it became huge. Then he started one for NFTs with a friend of his. And then now he runs a company called Unfilter, I think out of North Carolina. And it's a company that helps people who are business owners and anybody who wants to be filmed and does filming. But he taught himself everything. And he's such a good filmmaker. And he's a blogger, and he writes really eye-catching copywriting. And he's just really good in terms of marketing and public relations. And I love following his content, and yours reminds me, it's along that same vein. As I watch your videos, there's so much time and effort and craft that goes into what you're doing. And I love it because you're not even you're not a media guy. You're not a full-time content creator. And then you're like, oh yeah, here's my background. And I started a travel here. I'll put you on full screen. I started a travel company or travel vlog with my wife. I just love it.
I love it too. And you know, my wife and I wanted to do this because it allows us to do something together, right?
Oh
So I
yeah,
have my
that's
own
important.
channel, but then now we get to do something together and we get to travel. And so we're going to NASCAR tomorrow. Actually, I took leave. We're going to Bristol, Tennessee, because she wants to do like all things Southern this year. So we were at Houston Rodeo just a couple of weeks ago. So now we're going to NASCAR and we're going to film some of that stuff. And so I'm excited. You know, I love photography and videography and stuff like, you know, what you're trying to do is learn how to be better. And one thing I'm doing now is actually I'm learning how to do drone videos. And apparently if you do it for your YouTube channel and I'm monetized, you have to have an FAA license Article 107 or something like that. So you
Wow.
have to be a commercial drone pilot, even if you make a penny. So now I'm studying, and I went through flight school with the flight surgery program. So I went through, you know, like the knife program
Uh-huh.
anyway. So I know a little bit of it, but now I have to
Yeah.
review all this stuff, how to read like, you know, these charts and, you know, navigational stuff and weather stuff. And anyway,
I love it. It's like you're a lifelong learner. You're just like, okay, well, now I'm going to take on this. It reminds me of what I was telling you about before the show. I get my mindset on something. I'm like, was the COVID mandate an unlawful order? I really want to know because there's all these people who are impacted by it. You got all these military members all over X for some reason. It's just the talk of the town, only on X, where all the military members who are still on active duty, many of them, are still talking about this issue and really kind of holding DOD to account on it. And I'm like, what? There's a court case on it that's still being litigated right now in March. It was filed on March 20th of this year, and I was like, this is still going on, and you don't see that being reported about. Military.com's not picking that up. Task and Purpose isn't picking it up, and that's what's so cool about what we're doing, Andrew. Is like we have the opportunity to bring stories to the public as content creators that sometimes aren't getting told in the mainstream media. And I'm sure you feel the same way about some of the issues that you tackle.
Oh, absolutely. Like the autism's part of it right now, you know, because I've given talks, and even if all the scientific evidence that I provide is so overwhelming, I will literally have mothers be there at my talk at the end, but they want to basically not hear it. So they actually box their ears and just say, but you're just an ophthalmologist. And they will say it over and over again. Like somehow that's going to help, you know, discount what I just told them about their, you know, possibly, you know, making their child more autistic. And so that's what I'm facing now. That's why it's like, you know, let's just do videos. Let's stay home and basically, you know, do YouTube. So I don't have to go travel and face parents literally telling me at the end of my talk, you're wrong, or I can't listen to you, you know, but that's why I do it. I mean, that's, you know, you and we like
fascinated about it. Yeah.
Yeah. We're fascinated, but we like controversy because we want to help with the truth.
Right. And we want to get people talking about the issues. It's not so much that we want to like stir the pot and cause trouble. I think what it is that we want to push these issues forward, and we want to see momentum on things that need to be fixed. And the only way to do that is to be controversial. Like you can't avoid controversy if you want to make change. And the only way to make change is to have hard conversations and bring up things that people don't want to talk about. And so, and you have to be okay with people disagreeing with you. You have to be okay with, well, not okay, but you have to call out when people are trolling you, or they're using personal attacks, or they're making up lies about you. I mean, I've had it all because of the fact that I talk about hard issues. But at the end of the day, I'm not stopping because I know what I'm doing, and I know it's the right thing to do. And I'm willing to own when I get it wrong too.
So I used to really get caught up, and we talked about dopamine. So, and I help people out there about dopamine and social media. So that can also get addictive, right? So when we're arguing and people are like, let's say posting on social media saying, oh, Dr. Doan's a quack, he's totally wrong about that, or whatever it is. I will sit there and in the past had to write like an hour essay in rebuttal to whatever that person's negativity is. And it wasted my time, wasted my energy, and got my dopamine all jacked up. So here's a piece of advice for other content creators. Use ChatGPT. So basically ChatGPT will understand and know your angle and your point of view. So now I just copy and paste. And if I can't copy and paste, I take a screenshot of whatever comment it is. I put it into ChatGPT and I answer in a human, a funny way, answer in a smart aleck way, answer in an intelligent way with APA references. And within 10 seconds, I get a response. I can read what the response is, and then bam, without any thought, without any waste of my dopamine, without any even uptick in my heart rate, I can reply to naysayers like nobody's business and just shut them down.
Love that, Andrew, because I do the same thing. I go through so much work to try to deconstruct what someone has said to me if I think it's nonsensical or they don't a lot of times it's because they don't even understand what my original point was, and they'll go to something that has nothing to do with my point and try to distract from the argument. And I'm always it started because of the fact that I knew as a public affairs officer that I was being held to this incredibly high standard of discretion, and I was being watched because people sometimes don't like what I had to say. And so I knew that if I had somebody attack me, I didn't have the tools to go on the offense and attack right back. That would have just made, like you said, and then it would have done crazy things with my dopamine and made me stressed out. So I knew that that's not the road I could go down. But I've never thought, I use ChatGPT all the time now. It's like my best friend. I love it. It is changed my life. And like you said, I don't feel it's plagiarizing. I feel it's an editor. I still write out all my own posts, but what it does is it really helps me put my thoughts in a way that's even better. And it's making me a better writer. I can tell even as I craft posts now, or I write my show notes, or I come up with my, my opening line. I can tell that it's doing things to make my writing a little bit better and a little crisper. And sometimes you just have to outsource some of that to just bring down your stress levels. I totally understand.
Yeah, and it's actually making me a better content provider too, or creator, because I would put a person's bio into ChatGPT. I would put in their, let's say, summary of all their activities. And I say, create 10 questions with the hook being the first, and then a conclusion that's a gangbuster, basically, or a take-home message. And it would actually generate 10 solid questions.
That's amazing.
Is that amazing? So the interview I did in Arizona was done exactly that. Very little changes by the host, and they loved it because ChatGPT understood the dynamics of what they were doing and the history behind it, because ChatGPT now uses Bing and actually searches the internet for more information to fill in the gaps that, it didn't understand.
What really gets me about it is, because I use it a lot for my LinkedIn post, is that it now knows my tone.
Yes.
It's been, you know what I mean? Even when it rewrites, quote unquote rewrites, it keeps everything the way I want it to say it. And it uses even words that I've used in the past. It has really changed. I used it the other day to help me put together a presentation for podcasting. I was asked by the military journalism and media organization, a military, they're going to kill me, but it was a trade organization for people who are in the military that go into journalism. And they wanted me to put together a presentation on how to get started in podcasting. What are some of the things to keep in mind? Stuff that I know, but I thought, I don't really have a good outline of how I want to structure it. And that's what it did for me. It gave me a structure. I used my own photos. I used my own, case studies, all that, but it just helped so much. And I think this is wonderful. And these tools are, unless you want to pay extra for the bigger ChatGPT, but I don't pay anything for it. And I'm one of these days, I'm knocking on something. They're gonna charge me for this stuff, but I'm gonna enjoy the free version for as long as I can. But what would you say if you had to advise somebody who is still on active duty? Because you're a senior officer like me. I'm an 05, you're an 06. And I think it's even harder for us. It's okay for the junior enlisted. It's okay for the junior officers, but you get to our pay grade and man, I will tell you, it is difficult because our pay grades are so political and they really, I feel, discourage us from doing this. And so I'm curious, what advice would you have for an 04 to 06 that wants to branch out and start something like this, especially as they're going through the transition process and they're seeing down the road what they might be interested in doing.
Well, the Navy Public Affairs Office actually has a packet, a social media, advice or basically
Handbook.
legalese handbook. That's it. Yeah.
Social media handbook.
Read that handbook, understand it. Then feed it to ChatGPT. That's what I do. So I can actually feed it any Navy instruction and it'll read the entire instruction. Then I tell ChatGPT, if I do A, B, and C, can I, am I still going to be within safe grounds? And ChatGPT will actually analyze it like a legal, AI lawyer and say, yes, that will be, or no, that would not be. And if it says no, not be, then you ask ChatGPT, hey, how do I do it so that I can stay within legal boundaries? And it will actually advise you on how to do it. And so, and then check with someone like Teresa Carpenter, who is the senior PAO. And then that way, if you get in trouble, you said, well, Teresa told me I could do it. And but by then she's already on, she's on the way out. And,
well, one of the helpful things too, is that everybody doesn't know this maybe, but you have, okay. So the JAG at your command, they work for the commander. They are not your JAG.
No,
and
they're not your friend.
A lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, I can just, they can be your friend and they can be super cool people, but they represent the command's interests. They don't represent yours. So what you must do if you need advice is go to defense counsel or pay out of pocket. If you don't want to pay out of pocket, you're like me and you're very frugal, you will not want to pay out of pocket, then you must consult defense legal. And I had a very good experience, even just most recently. Something happened at my last job and I consulted defense legal. They gave me wonderful advice and I was really grateful for that opportunity to have a second set of eyes on something. And I think that that's really important to avail ourselves of those resources when we need them.
Absolutely. And then in addition to that, no uniform online, right? So don't wear your uniform. Don't say your rank. Don't say your title. Never use your military status for personal advantage or favor or, gain. That's against, the UCMJ. And basically, if you do that and you have a disclaimer that basically that's on every single podcast that Teresa does, and I do too, and I actually have the bottom that this is not, this is only my opinion and not the DOD.
Not the opinions of the DOD.
Yeah, exactly. And just state that, and you should be safe. And also stay not political. So do not endorse any political party or whatever. Just stay away from that topic and you should be okay. Now, I dealt with controversial topics. So back in 2017, I had my YouTube channel yanked because, my commander at that time didn't agree with the stuff that I was doing research on, even though it was good research. But you know what? That's commander to commander, dependent, because the three COs before that one thought my research was great and wanted me to do more. The fourth CO didn't like it and didn't believe in it. So, they change every 2 years. Just learn how to be flexible. But as long as you're not breaking the law, you're not going to get in trouble.
Right. And I think that unfortunately, we really don't have clear and unambiguous guidance about social media. And I think that what you really have to do is you have to err on the side of caution and sometimes be overly cautious because sometimes even things that you don't think are considered political could be considered political by somebody. And so the best thing that I can think to do is be transparent, be honest, tell your chain of command what you're doing. If you think that there's anything that might be questionable about what you're going to do online, talk to your leadership, tell them what you're doing, ask them what they think, if they think that this is an acceptable thing to do. And unfortunately, you're right, Andrew, you are going to have those people that just aren't going to like what you're doing online. And you have to deal with that along with this. Because there's also people out there that just don't think we should be doing this at all. I don't agree with that, but there is that opinion exists. And so I think that this is an amazing opportunity, like you said, for people to put their art out there, put their views out there, put their products out there and their work. And people are getting a lot of good things that are coming from it, not per personal gain, but educating people and providing a resource and a service. So you're definitely one of those people. What's next for you as you move forward in this journey?
You know, I'm just my wife and I want to start this travel channel. We just started a few videos, but really to do stuff with her is fun. It's almost like,
Yeah.
you know, marriage therapy. So you know, she looks forward to it. I look forward to it, and so that's what's next there. And then for me, you know, I'm at 19. I could go a little longer, or I can get out. I don't know. So
Mhm.
we'll
Yeah.
see. I'm still having fun. So
Yeah. The one
if
thing you
I'm
got to keep going.
yeah, if I'm having fun, I'm going to you know, continue.
Yeah, it was for me. It was an adventure for so long until it just wasn't an adventure anymore, and it was definitely my time to go. And it was really coincided with starting this show 4 years ago. But as during that process, I mean, I started the show when I was in Norfolk, then I went from Norfolk to London, and then London to here in Mississippi. And during those years that I did it, um, I was really glad that I was able to balance having the show and having guests on and even talking about hard things and then still being able to serve. So I love what you're doing, Andrew. I will stay a fan. If people want to find out more information about you, I did link to your website on the show notes, and then I believe here I'll show the little banner right here. People can go to just your name, drandrewdoan.com. For more information. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and to share your story with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. I really enjoyed, you know, just chatting with you.
Me too. Me too. I will meet you backstage to say goodbye, but want to just definitely thank you for this opportunity and the chance to talk to you, learn your story. And yeah, I'm going to go full screen now, and I will meet you backstage in just 1 second. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us tonight. I will see you next week. I know we had 2 shows this week. I think I'm only going to do 1 next week. But as I close out the call, I will say what I always say, which is take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.